Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 316. We've got a fun intro even today. Amanda's here with me, right?
Yes, and Anissa.
Anissa's here too.
Hey.
like normally it was only one person who did the intros, now two. Now, hi Anissa, why are you here?
Hello, because you told me to be. Why else would I be here?
I am not pulling the strings.
Oh, that was my segue?
No. So we have a cool thing that's kind of new for AIM, which is our publisher, our company, whatever.
Yeah.
Like we're Fine Woodworking, but we are owned by AIM. And this one is special. What are you doing, Anissa?
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know why I'm going, but I'm excited that I'm going.
Where are you going?
So it's Woodsmith, Popwood, and Fine Woodworking are doing a journey through England's woodworking heritage. So we're going to the UK, and we're hoping to bring up to 30 people with us. We're going to be, I think 8 days and 5 museums, 2 estates, 1 woodworking craft store, and I think we're going to tour Triton Tools and maybe get some cool stuff from them. But we're going to tour the manufacturer. So it's going to be super fun and cool.
Intense.
And yeah. Intense in a good way.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, it never used to be like this. And it started, I think, before AIM acquired Fine Woodworking and Taunton Press. But it seems, I don't know if it's social media or what, but even with Popwood and Woodsmith and like Lost Art Press is in there and Fine Woodworking, it seems to be more of a community feel, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that was prior to AIM, because we're all kind of just sharing everything and helping each other out and like, oh, I have a video of this. Can you link to this? And it's pretty cool. And so this is the first event we're all kind of doing together. But
not Lost Art Press, but
right.
And Woodsmith, yeah.
Yeah, but we do work with Lost Art Press a lot too. Yeah. But right, they're not part of this one. But yeah, it should be super cool. And then following up on Fine Woodworking New England, where it was just, hey, everybody come, don't pay us anything. There's no admission. This is kind of a little bit of a different, like, hey, we're going to go abroad and we're going to study the culture there and the woodworking history. And, you do have to pay, but it's going to be really cool. And if you could do that. So it's kind of bringing different types of events for everybody. So
it's you cool. and Phil from Woodsmith.
And Phil Hubert. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
No. And I I think that is, I think I have called it 2 polar opposite sides of one of my favorite woodworking coins or something, where it's like you and Phil, you're both super curious, and I think it'll be like that would be really fun to like go through a museum, and Phil's going to be looking at one thing and you're going to be looking at another thing. And it's two cool people to host this thing. So
yeah, I'm very excited. I'm going to try not to annoy him. But I'll do my best. I'll do my best to not annoy Phil, because he seems like just a wealth of knowledge, and it's going to be super cool for me to be hanging out with him too. And everybody who signs up. So it'll be fun.
So it's September 9th through 16th, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, London School of Furniture Making, Victoria and Albert Museum in London, Crafton Wood Chair Making Museum. I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
That sounds amazing. Yeah.
All sorts of cool stuff. So, of course, we will have links in the doobly-doo, right?
Oh, yeah. The doobly-doo.
That's what we call it, right?
That's the doobly-doo was, I think it was Craig Benzine or something who started calling it the doobly-doo. And I just love the doobly-doo phrase. I like saying it.
I like hearing it and saying it. I was going to credit Amanda for the doobly-doo.
I'll accept that, I guess. It sounds like something I'd come up with, sure.
Right?
So what else is going on this episode, Anissa? Introduce what's about to go down, because it has nothing to do with Amanda or I.
Right. So I was shooting with Vic Tesselin last week, and this is something that came out of Fine Woodworking New England, where I was just chatting with Vic, and we were talking about when I was coming up to shoot, and I think one of us said, let's do a podcast, and must have been him, because somehow it turned out, and he said, oh, and I have a friend that could come. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. Let's talk to Ben. And when you had asked me if I could be on the pod with Vic, I thought he had talked with you about it. So you were talking about you, Vic, and me.
Yeah, just doing a regular
together,
podcast.
Just doing a remote podcast. And I said, oh, great. And he said he has a third. And then so we got into that whole who's on first kind of thing for a little while. And then I guess you and Vic FaceTimed. And so, shoot, I'm not going to be able to pronounce Steve's last name unless I am looking at it on paper. We went through this whole thing. So Vic.
Wait, no, I will try. Der-Garabedian. Der-Garabedian. That's what I think it is.
There's
always one more syllable than I think there's going to be, but okay.
Maybe. You're probably right. So Steve, Vic, and I did the podcast from Vic's shop after Vic and I were finished shooting.
Yeah. And it's great. It's a lot of fun.
Vic was very proud to have gotten the okay from you to do the podcast.
He pulled it off.
Yeah, he was the MC. He set everything up, and he was very serious about it and very determined to do a good job for you.
Well done all. And here is that episode.
Cool.
Hey, how's it going, eh? My name's Vic, and this is my buddy Steve.
How's it going, eh?
This is my friend Anissa.
Hey, hosers.
Welcome to Fine Woodworking Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Is this the first time all three have been on Canadian soil?
Oh, probably, right?
Yeah, there's probably not been a...
all Canadian...
like, everybody's in Canada at the same time. Canada. Oh my goodness, how cool is this? So here we are.
This is momentous because we had to rip this podcast out of Ben's tentative hands.
Wasn't even his cold dead hands. It was like his hands. Like he's still breathing as far as we know. We got this, Ben. We got it.
We're going to do right by you, Ben.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So why are we here in Canada, first of all?
Well, I know why I'm here.
I live here. So does he.
I live.
So here. I'm here shooting with you. We're shooting an article about having a shop, but not having a table saw, and how to navigate doing everything that you could do on the table saw without the table saw.
Right. Other ways of doing it.
Right.
That's cool. And then because if it was just you and I, we would just sit here and giggle at each other. We thought we'd invite a third person.
Right.
And so I selfishly suggested one of my best friends, Steve Der-Garabedian. And Steve and I, how do we know each other?
So I think the first time we met was at when I graduated from Rosewood.
Yes.
And there was a kind of like a woodworking event at the time. I won't slap the table. And so during my graduation, you and I first met.
Yep.
You then continued on with Rosewood. I started doing my professional life with woodworking.
Yeah.
And then eventually we met again here and there.
Yeah, like woodworking shows, random.
Yeah. And then, and then you had this brilliant idea that we should, instead of just one person demoing the same thing all weekend long, you had this brilliant idea about doing a project from beginning to end.
Right. And so we started sharing a stage together.
Yeah.
And so we were, so we both would have microphones on, and we would both be teaching. And of course, you've just had supper with us, so you know what that's like. Hilarity ensued. And so Steve has written a book on veneering, and it's really geared towards someone who's looking to get started in veneering.
Right.
Because it can get complicated quickly.
Yeah, it can. I mean, part of the when the publisher contacted me, his approach was, veneering is really good, but there's a lot of negativity around it. So why don't we do something that's accessible?
Negativity, like because like it's regarded as like a cheap way to do things. Is that what you mean?
I mean, from a woodworker's perspective, I think, and I think this still holds true to this day. From a woodworker's perspective, it's like you've got to buy, $1,800 vacuum press. You're going to need a whole bunch of different tools. And from a client's perspective, they think that it's an inferior product.
Right. It's not solid wood, so therefore it's not. And it doesn't match their perception of what a piece of furniture should be made from.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw the curriculum at Rosewood, when I saw veneering on there, I thought, I'll skip that part because I had that same perception about veneering. But, much like, I was petrified of sharpening. Once I was taught how to do it, once I was taught how to do veneering, bending wood, I mean, I felt like my creativity was released.
Right. Well, there's a lot that you can do with veneer. I mean, it's like you can, just saying like doing bent work and work around like curves and you're just that alone. And then the nicest wood seems to go to veneer, doesn't it? Like, like the nicest logs get converted, right?
Yeah. You can really stretch the logs out too.
Oh my goodness.
There's no waste.
Well, yeah.
It's like cutting salami at the deli.
It is like cutting salami at the deli.
No, because that would be a cross cut.
That's true. They don't peel the salami.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
Maybe at your deli they do.
I might have to switch delis.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Steve, I'm glad you're here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Just because I think you bring an interesting perspective to things. So
thank you.
So it'll be good. And Anissa has put out a call to people to sort of ask questions or submit questions.
Yep,
so,
we got a couple good questions.
Okay, cool. So let's tackle one.
All right, the first one. I mean, I think you have a question that you want to ask Steve about veneering.
Right. It's true, I do.
So the first one is from Adam Godet. He's actually one of our authors from Fine Woodworking. He has an article, like a tool test, I guess you would call it, a review of hard wax oil finishes coming up in the issue that's going to come out next.
Oh, good. Because there's so many of them now. Yeah.
So it's, I wouldn't necessarily call it a head-to-head test, but it's kind of wrangling all of them. And I haven't seen the whole article yet, but he's written some From the Benches. He's done a bunch of blogs for us. He's done another finishing article, tool reviews. And he asks, he's in Washington.
Okay.
And DC. And he said, well, everybody, probably about 12 people said, we want to hear what Vic has to say about moving shop.
Right. Of course they do.
He's an expert by now. But Adam's question is, any opinions on how to do a minimalist shop nowadays, since you wrote about being a minimalist woodworker in your book?
Right. Right.
So he's wanting to know, like, what's changed since then. And he also says, I teach a lot of beginners with the intention of them setting up a workspace. They're all in DC without a traditional space, so we rely on your wisdom here.
Ah, okay.
So he wants to hear what you do differently now and, talk about being a minimalist woodworker out of necessity because you don't have this space.
Right, right. So, again, I'm not a minimalist woodworker. I wrote a book called Minimalist Woodworking, but it was more about exactly what he's describing, is like not having the space to be able to like set up a full shop or something that's like fully appointed, or maybe not able to run power tools because it might be an apartment or, something like that. So I think like the range is huge, right? Like where you could you might have like a 10 by 10 space like I started with years and years ago, and all you can work is hand tools. And then, you get to the 1-car garage kind of size, and then you can start to, spread out a little bit and get some stuff. But really, when it comes to like power tools, like, of course you can go all hand tools if noise is an issue and that sort of thing. And if that's what you enjoy about the hobby as well, like if you know what I mean, like from a hobbyist point of view, if you want to work all with hand tools, that's great. You have no deadlines, you have no, things that you have to consider. But, like if you have the ability to make noise, then like I would recommend doing something along some sort of a track-based system, right? So where like, you have a track saw, you have something that connects to the track, either whether like, a circular saw, a router, those sorts of things. So like you can have a lot of functionality in a pretty small space.
I think a lot more woodworkers are going to a track saw because it's more portable.
Right. Right.
It's a little easier not easier to use. It's less intimidating, I think, than a big table saw.
Well, and it's hard to hurt yourself with a track saw. I mean, you would really have to like
go out of your way
to hurt yourself, because the blade is completely, either in the cut or in the body of the saw.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think like, you can do an awful lot. Like this is my, for people who are watching, this is my everyday workbench that I do both hand and power tool operations on. It's not a traditional workbench, but it allows me to work with track saws and routers and all that other kind of stuff. And it allows me to adjust the positions of things and restrain things and that sort of stuff. So I think like this is a great bench for getting started, because you don't need the expense of a vise. And that's one of the things, like in the first book, I mean, one of the projects was a full on Nicholson workbench. And like in hindsight, that's an intimidating project. I think I did okay at explaining it. I hope I did. But something like this, even if you can't build it right away, you can buy a lot of the components and be able to have a workbench for fairly inexpensively. And that allows you to kind of get started. And I think, as you progress, is if you have more room, then, you start adding machinery. Everybody goes for the table saw first, but I mean, I think a lot of us would agree that a bandsaw is really the most versatile of machines. because it can resaw, it can rip, it can cross cut fairly well, actually, especially if you're going to shoot it afterwards.
Yeah, I think if I were starting out new and I was limited in space and money, I love the way this thing, how you maneuvered everything on this thing today. I walked in and I was just like, what is this little grid-like thing? But you did some really cool stuff on this. And that auxiliary little thing here is probably half the size of this.
Yep.
So even if you wanted to start with something like that on your kitchen table,
right,
clamp down, that would be super cool. And this is UJK.
Yep, UJK. And we'll have links to this. I'm sure that's what Ben would say.
Yeah.
And so
we can channel Ben.
Yeah. So Ben would say that we'll have links in the description or something.
I can hear his voice right now.
Yeah, you can hear Ben? Yeah.
So, anyway, I was going to say a bandsaw, I do think I would go with even a smaller, if I was starting out, and hopefully not in my kitchen, but if I had to do something like that, or in a spare bedroom or something like that, I would get a little bandsaw because they're not that noisy.
Right. Bandsaws are fairly quiet when it's usually the dust collector is much louder than the bandsaw is. Yeah.
And so it's funny, when I first started setting up a shop, I thought everything is built around the table saw. Whereas now, with a little bit of knowledge, I think it's the other way.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and again, from watching you today, because the article again is not doing everything without the table saw, it seems as though once you got used to this system, it's just second nature. It's just switching gears to a different type of work. And that's how, like, you just went and did everything with the track saw, and it was 1, 2, 3. You didn't have to think about it.
Right.
As I would when I was walking up to the table saw. So it's a matter of kind of retraining the way you think about how to do a task and then just getting used to it. And then it becomes second nature. So I think there's something to be said for the track saw system.
Well, your workflow sort of comes by what tools you have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you didn't have a jointer but you had a thickness planer, well, then you'd get really good at flattening a board with a hand plane for one side and then sticking it through the thickness plane.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's one of those things where it's like there's a lot of ideas out there that suggest that, oh, you need to have this tool, that tool, this tool, that tool, and then you can start. And the reality is that it's not the case. I mean, you can start, and then you just have to think about what is going to give you your most bang for your buck. You know what I mean? And so, for me, the bandsaw is by far, the most like the tool that does the most.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of a good word for that, but it's not coming. Yeah.
The tool that does the most?
Yeah, that's what it does. It does the most.
Versatile?
Most versatile.
Versatile. That's the word. And is it versatile or versatile?
I don't know, but I say podcast.
Very good.
We were noting that you can hear Anissa's accent when she says
my accent.
When she, that's pretty good.
People say that about us.
Yeah. They think we talk funny.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. About
house.
Oh, and the other thing we noted, this is an aside and has nothing to do with woodworking, and it's only going to take a minute, but we're driving back from dinner and there's a vehicle that has, basically it has a license plate in a bag with a string on it, and the bag with the string on it with the license plate in it is hanging off the rear view windshield, or the
rear windshield wiper.
Rear windshield wiper. And I said, what is going on with that guy and his license plate? And they said,
it's a dealer plate.
It's a dealer plate.
Yeah,
so
that's what they do.
Hang the thing off, like it's just flapping around on the back of the car. That's what magnets are for.
Well,
in the United States, the dealers have magnetic plates that they just click on the car.
Yeah, well, magnets are actually illegal in Canada. And so we can't use them.
Huh.
Yeah, that's why all that mag switch stuff I bought it's just sitting over there.
It doesn't actually work because of the closer we are to magnetic north.
That's true.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we answered his question, but I think that like you got to start with what makes sense and what your goals are. And it might be that like if you're just starting out in woodworking and you live in an apartment and you want to sort of get started in furniture making and you're, you know, whether you want to make it as a living or, you know, you may end up seriously having to look at renting space or sharing a space with other people or that kind of thing. But if you've got, like, I'm pretty confident that if I had a 10 by 10 bedroom, which is a pretty small bedroom, but a spare bedroom, I could use a combination of tools that would allow me to woodwork. I wouldn't be building queen size beds or
Right.
anything like that. I remember being in Sweden and I met this guy who lived in a sort of almost like a bachelor apartment, you know, like no bedroom, right? He had a kitchen area and then 2 steps up and then there was like a large room that was basically his bedroom.
So like a studio apartment.
Yeah, like a studio, right. And the only reason you knew that this space was his bedroom was because there was a bed pushed up into the corner of it. Everything else was shop.
Huh.
And so he literally said, I can roll out of bed and go to my bench. And if you want to do it, you'll find ways to do it.
That's true. But also, like you said, you're not going to start out with building bed frames.
Right.
If I were starting out, if I didn't have a lot of space, if I didn't have a lot of tools, I would probably try and hone all my hand skills.
Right.
I would buy already processed wood, milled wood, and whether I got it from a box store or ordered it or went to a woodcraft or something like that, my dovetails would get practiced nonstop and they'd be perfect.
Right.
I would be chip carving. I would be doing other kinds of carving. I would just be working on those small things that could hone your hand skills.
Yeah.
Sharpening, some chisels, that kind of stuff. Like just keep it small, keep it simple, and just practice until you can expand a little at a time.
Yeah.
When I lived in a condo, I would spread out a tarp in the living room and just work with a Dremel. And if I needed bigger tools, then I would hit up a friend that had a house and work in their driveway or...
yeah, you just do what you got to do.
I got good at a Dremel.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Yeah.
I just remembered that. It's all coming back to me now.
It's all coming back to me now. Yeah, I think, sorry, you had made a point that made really good sense and now it's gone.
Of course it did.
Well, yeah, there's no doubt that it made sense, of course. But yeah, I think that like you can hone. Oh, yes, I remember now. The ordering of wood. Like I have a lot of students of mine who will work only with hand tools. And then what they do is they will order wood from a lumber yard and they'll get it milled 4S. And then basically they can do the surface prep, they can do the joinery, they can do all of those things, but they don't have the drudgery of like taking an 8-quarter board and, you know, resawing it and all that other stuff. So, and that's a really common thing now, for lumber yards to do. You can literally send them a cut list of everything like oversized by, you know, half an inch or so. And basically there's your milling done. And then now you just go to work and do the fun stuff.
Yeah. There's a huge benefit to that. I like milling wood. I don't feel it like drudgery. Like I like cutting the grass in my yard. There's just something. What?
You like cutting the grass?
I do.
Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, once my kids go out and clean up the poop. Yeah. There's something, the dog poop.
Oh, I was going to say, you make your kids poop on the front lawn? That's odd.
Yeah, there's something therapeutic about it. And it's just like, there's an order to it and a finality to the task that's
to each blade of grass.
I mean, I do swerve around bees when they're in the path, but
that's nice of you.
It is.
Yeah. because we need more bees.
We do need more bees.
I think some of the places that we've shopped, because we're local, some of the places that we go to here, their milled section over the years has gotten bigger and bigger. Because I think people, you know, do you buy a jointer or a thickness planer? And while you can do some tricks with your thickness planer to joint, I think it's a lot easier to show up at the lumber yard and buy milled whatever. And it's not just poplar and pine anymore.
No, it's everything.
Yeah.
Like the local places we go to, you can get any species, including a lot of exotics that are already milled up to 3/4 of an inch. And it's quite nice. So there. I think, did we get it?
I think so.
Okay. Cool.
I thought you did.
Okay. You need to take your hands off of that.
Okay.
I'm being really good.
Yeah.
This is going to drive Ben crazy. I'm trying, Ben. I really am.
Do you want me to read another one of the questions that came in? It's another one for you. I know we want to ask Steve some veneer stuff.
No, I want to ask Steve about veneer.
Okay.
So we'll do that. So because I'm interested, one of the things that I find difficult about veneer work is getting clean joints, right? And so the way I was taught, the way you were taught was sort of sandwiching them between a couple of pieces of MDF and then using a jack plane on its side. Right. And I'm sure you've seen that as well. And you just shoot those and away you go. And in some cases, you would even use like a long square block with sandpaper on it. And then because if it was something, you know, crazy like a burl or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're talking about shop sawn veneers here. Or are you talking
shop
about
sawn or commercial?
Okay.
Commercial.
Yeah. I mean,
what's your way? What do you like doing?
So my go-to method for jointing veneers for edge jointing is to use a specific blade on the track saw, and even some of the gnarliest grained veneer comes out ready to tape and seam off the track saw.
And so, like, how do you...
So basically, it's like jointing, I guess, thicker pieces of wood. You close the book, and the two edges that are going to be jointed, put them down on, I have a specific piece of MDF that I use that locks the track in, but you could just as easily do it over what most people do with pink styrofoam insulation. And as long as the track, as long as the splinter guard holds it down properly, you get a really good edge. The key that if you've got a brand new blade from the track saw company, no matter who it is, it's going to cut fine.
Right.
But if you buy a blade specifically for veneering, negative rake, and a higher tooth count, then you're getting a really, really clean cut.
And then who makes that blade?
CMT, Freud.
Okay. So
in fact,
readily available.
Readily available. In fact, if you got a blade that was meant to cut aluminum, as long as it's got a negative rake, it does a really good job of jointing veneers. So
it's not something that's packaged as a veneer blade.
No, I think
a veneer cutting blade.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, the Freud one, I don't know if they talk about it as a veneer blade specifically, but yeah, I'd have to look at the blade again, but it has a negative rake.
And that's the key, is the negative rake.
That's the key, the higher tooth count. And I think they say, you know how you've got like a, not a composite blade, blades that are meant to cut like MDF and plywoods. Well, those will cut veneer really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. And so you've got like a little jig that you've made basically.
Right.
And the track saw locks onto that.
Right. So basically there's just part of the track saw that has the grooves on the underside. I've just locked it on this piece of MDF. And if I remember to make sure that I adjust the cut depth properly, you won't go through a bunch of jigs as you cut through them. But yeah, it locks it in. I have it protruding just a small amount or bigger if I'm trying to size something down. And it's really is my go-to method of, jointing veneers. In fact, usually when I post about it, you, send a nasty comment saying, look at what you're doing. You're using the track saw on top of your table saw, which I usually do.
Right. Because the table saw is a great big flat surface.
It is, if you have the blade retracted.
Yeah, right. Right.
But I feel as though I saw you on the cover of Canadian Woodworker.
Canadian Woodworking magazine.
Woodworking. Yeah. So what was that article? Was that?
So that was so every year Canadian Woodworking magazine does a shop issue, a small shop issue. And so this one is geared around, track. There's a few articles about track saws in there. And so that jig that I was using is more like a crosscut jig for the track saw, for smaller work. Because even on a cabinet saw, the issue you run into is when you're working with smaller pieces.
Right.
And so you've got to have a way of holding it. So on my table saw, I've got a crosscut sled. So I thought the same thing for the track saw. Well, 80% of what I use a track saw for is veneer work.
Right.
I still use it for other things as well. When I have tons of stuff on my table saw.
Table saw.
Yeah.
Like the track saw.
Like the track saw, right.
Very cool.
Okay, well, why don't we take time for a quick break?
Right.
Because that's what Ben says usually after a couple of questions. And I think it's for an ad.
Probably.
I don't know.
Ben just does the magical stuff that he does and makes it all sound
Waves
good and
along
look good. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to take a break and we'll be back.
Yeah. I think that this is when he checks to make sure everything is still running and
This is still recording.
there's battery.
That's still recording.
How do you know that's recording?
Because the little light's on.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to go and check it just to make sure. All the way from the land down under, Melbourne Tool Company has launched their range of hand tools in North America. A line of tools that are straightforward, precise, and welcoming to both enthusiasts and professionals. The team behind these tools includes industrial designers with hands-on woodworking experience, ensuring your products are tested against the rigorous conditions of tough Australian timbers. If they perform well with Australian timbers, then they'll certainly excel in North American varieties. This level of dedication to quality and functionality makes it worthwhile for anyone passionate about woodworking to explore their offerings. For more information, visit them at www.melbournetool.com.
So I have an idea for a reality TV show connected to woodworking.
Ooh.
Right. So here's my thought. Hear me out.
I'm hearing you.
I can pretty much, without seeing anything, having any visual context for anything, I can hear a tool and I know if it's a drill press. I know if it's a circ saw. I know if it's a router.
I like where this is going.
Sometimes I can even, as soon as I hear the sound, I can visualize what they're doing. I think that there should be a reality television show where you get 3 woodworkers and they have to identify what the machine is or what the tool is and what's being done. Because I can, right? As soon as you hear it, you know what's happening. You get that instant visual, it just all pops right in your head. I would win that show.
Well, I don't know if you would. If I'm being honest, I feel like
so the one thing
I
that
would give
pops
you a
in my
run
head,
for your money.
I don't know.
The one thing that pops into my head when
you have
you said
tinnitus,
that-
you wouldn't give me a run for my money.
Hey?
is when you put a table saw blade on backwards.
Oh, that's a distinctive sound.
That's a distinctive sound. And
I have
smell.
never heard that sound.
See, you would lose.
I would lose that
At
one.
Rosewood, somebody did that, and it is a very distinctive sound. Yeah.
And the smoke.
And the yeah.
Was it a saw stop? No, that was pre-saw stop.
Pre-saw stop.
Yeah. I don't think Rosewood does have saw stops, do
I don't know.
or they did it.
They
at the time.
probably.
I think
at
they
that
do now,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
But yeah, like it's because it burns. Like you don't. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
I've never heard that
It's
sound.
pretty wild.
Fortunately.
That it's interesting because that's very true about how you can sort of hear the sounds. We were watching one of those sort of HGTV shows, and there's a guy, a Canadian guy named Brian Balmer, who has a show, and he was working with some people who had never really used any sort of power tools before, and so he had left this person to screw some paneling to drywall or to studs, and he hears. So you hear the sound of the drill, and he goes, "Oh, that's the sound of a screw being stripped."
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about.
Right, like you just, that's not going well.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I think that would be a great show.
I do too.
Or at the wood shows when a hot dog is saved.
Right.
That's a distinctive sound.
When they demonstrate the saw stop?
Yeah. I mean, I've just once set off the saw stop in the shared shop. Yeah. Not with a piece of wood.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
You had me scared there for a second.
Oh yeah. No, not with my fingers.
Oh, good.
So I know the sound, like it's so instantaneous when that whole thing drops and you're just like, what just happened? Why did the saw stop? Unfortunately,
because it's a saw stop.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, it's the same sound regardless of what's setting it off, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can hear it. Like you can be in a big, you can be in a big conference area or whatever, and like boom.
Yeah.
Because usually when we're teaching, we'll say, "Oh, another hot dog saved."
Awesome table saw, really bad deli slicer.
That's the joke. We say that it's the same joke.
Yep.
And everybody laughs. Much harder than you just did.
Sorry. I was trying to think if the hot dog was getting cross-cut or ripped.
That's a woodworker.
That's a woodworker right there. Yeah. Do you? I suppose you could rip a hot dog.
Yeah, because don't they slice them and put stuff in?
Oh, they can't. They'd have to be a big hot dog, though.
I'm sure they make big hot dogs. I feel like this is getting way off track right now.
Anyway, well, we're talking about woodworking and meat. I mean, I feel like they go, well, hot dogs aren't really meat, are they?
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
They can.
Okay. Let's talk about our favorite tool of all time for today.
Well, so sometimes we do segment potpourri, which means it could be your favorite tool, it could be a recommendation, it could be a smooth move.
Oh, okay, let's do that. Segment potpourri.
Yeah.
So it can be any of those things.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Oh. Okay.
Do you have one?
I do, actually.
Well, let's go.
First.
So I've been on this kick where, because I write, you do quite a few tool reviews. And so you get to a point where you're like, it starts becoming more about the tool. So this last little while, I've been on this kick about why I first got into woodworking, and that's to make things. So I've made like almost like a conscious effort to keep buying things or even reviewing things. But one of the things that I saw that I really liked and I bought, and I'm so happy that I did, was the blue spruce chisel plane.
Okay.
And I saw it on Instagram. I looked at it and I thought, wow, that is a really good tool. I'll have lots of uses for it. Ordered it, came in, and I am thrilled with it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool little plane.
Everything from, you know how when you put screws in MDF, it kind of raises it where the screw goes in. But then when you're going to take it apart and then glue it again, that little bump could stop things from coming together.
Oh, right.
So things like that. I've even used it to trim veneering, veneer edges. It's an awesome tool. It's the first tool I bought in a long, long time.
Right.
And I'm so happy I did.
That's cool. That is definitely a nice tool.
Yeah.
It just looks cool, and it's
the right dimensions. It fits well in my hand. And
it looks like it goes fast. It just has
like
that sort of styling to it. It just looks like it goes fast.
Yeah.
Like a Ford versus Ferrari kind of.
Right. Very cool. Have you got one?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Am I your favorite tool of all time for today?
After the shoot today, yes.
Wait a minute.
No, it went really well. The shoot was great.
No, it was fantastic.
Yeah. It could have done a lot faster.
Well, there was talking.
There was a little chatting.
Yeah.
Your dog is cute.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
very,
Bruno.
Very sweet.
He's a sweet boy.
So I have a combo. Favorite tool and a quick recommendation for an Instagram account.
Oh.
So Ben handed me this little sleeve a month or two back. It's this little purple sleeve that he's 3D printed with a little ruler inside. And he said, this thing is great. Here, take one. And I used it for the first time in the shop last week. I don't use an apron or a tool belt kind of thing. I just put everything in my pockets or just keep looking for it. It's not a very organized way to work, but I feel too encumbered when I have stuff like hanging. Yeah. But I always have a pencil, which is usually, my hair is up, so it's usually in my bun, and then I keep a ruler in my pocket. And I've always kept the same, it's like an inch wide, short, an inch by, I can't remember, 6 maybe, in my pocket just for little measurements. And it's always, the sharp corners are always getting stuck in the pocket. And I think that's why Ben made this sleeve. He probably talked about it on the podcast. But it was great just taking it in and out of my pocket. It wasn't snagging. It was like, and the smooth ride for the coming out of the sleeve, for the ruler coming out of the sleeve. It's great. It's a great little tool from Ben that you can't buy anywhere.
Right.
I have one.
That's amazing. I think Ben should go into production.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Maybe he has.
I mean, now that we're taking over the podcast, he's going to have all kinds of time, right?
To make tools.
Right. And then the other quick recommendation that I have is I came across this guy on Instagram, the Thatching Guy. Have you heard of this dude? It's not quite woodworking, but I think it will appeal to the woodworkers. It's this dude in the UK who repairs and puts on new thatched roofs.
Cool.
Oh.
It's incredible watching him work and the techniques that he's using and the tools that he's using. It will definitely satisfy like everything that appeals to woodworkers, I think. The Thatching Guy.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I'm going to check him out.
And those things are supposed to last like forever.
And
right?
they're beautiful. The designs that he can make with the material, they're really beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think when my roof needs replacing, I'm going to look at getting it thatched.
I can do that for you.
I
don't know how well it'll be done,
right.
but I can do that for you.
Right. It's going to look like somebody emptied their lawnmower on my roof.
How difficult can it be?
I mean, really.
Oh, check him out. Check out the work that he does and then have this conversation.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
What do you got?
I have this knife. I have this little knife that I showed you today.
Oh, that thing is beautiful.
And so it's Ben's fault that I have that knife because this guy is in Ukraine and Mirok Toolworks. And he makes this beautiful knife.
Sure.
Yeah. And he makes all kinds of other tools too. He makes squares. He makes levels. Ben's got this really cool circular ruler. Have you ever seen this thing? Like you literally like drive it along and it like paces off like how far you've driven it. And, so I saw Ben's first and I think Ben uses as a fidget spinner a lot because it's kind of like fun to play with. But this little knife, it just takes the Stanley sort of trapezoid shaped disposable blades. And I have that thing in my pouch all the time. And like, it is so handy. And I kind of chuckle to myself, but like when it gets dull, I don't just switch the blade over. I take it over to my Tormek and I actually sharpen the disposable blade. Because you can do that 2 or 3 times before it'll, and it's still good. But yeah, it's this thing that's like sort of exquisitely built and like, it's a nice tool.
And it's the one with all that beautiful engraving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all, and I think it's all CNC work and the mechanism for it to open and close.
Yeah. I noticed how satisfying that seemed to be.
You just sit there. Sometimes when I'm thinking, I just open and close, open and close, open and close, and then put a Band-Aid on and then, because I cut myself. But yeah, no, it's one of those tools where like you buy it and it's just satisfying. I like that. Cool. We got another question?
Well, one of the questions that everybody asked, and some people were serious and some people were mocking you.
How dare they?
I don't know how much you've talked about it in prior podcasts, but people seem to want to know, like, if you have any tips for moving your shop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the joke to that is that I've moved a lot in the last 5 years or so. I think that the one thing I learned is that you end up accumulating a lot of things, and a lot of them are just not useful, or maybe you're not working that way anymore. And so you're trying to, figure out, you see these things that as I pack them up and they're like covered in dust. And so I started to really look at those things and think, do I need that? Right? Is that something that I've used in the last year? And if so, is it like such an esoteric tool that, it's good to have, but you only use it once a year? Mm-hmm. Or is it something that I just don't use anymore? And so it's caused me to become more critical about what tools I have, and same with wood. I used to keep every little scrap, right? Because we're woodworkers and that's the way it is. And now I only do that. Like I have a 12-inch rule. And so like if it's under 12 inches long, it's gone.
So I was admiring your wood stash over there. Is that all of your wood stash?
Yeah. And then up there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's impressive.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and Andrea thinks this is excessive. And I'm like, you have no idea.
No.
You have no idea. She's never been to Steve's shop.
Well, I've never been to Steve's shop, so I don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't sound like it's neat and tidy. And
well, it's a working shop. It's not supposed to be.
No, you're right. But I mean, like,
there's lots of veneer.
There is a lot. There's a lot of veneer. Yeah. And so, but veneer takes up less room.
It does.
Because it's only just little.
How are you storing all the veneer?
Ideally, you want to store it flat and, something on top and something on bottom. But reality is, unless you had a warehouse, how do you do that? So a lot of times it's rolled up. If it's burls, then it's flat packed. And then if I know I'm going to use something, I'll keep it unrolled for a little bit and then work it.
And are you weighting it down when you're unrolling it?
Typically, if it's long enough, it'll flop on its own. Yeah. But I think I have more. Even if I veneered from now to the time that I died, I have more veneer, but I still keep
accumulating.
buying veneer because it's like, oh, that looks good.
So stay tuned for his estate sale.
Yeah, it'll be a good one.
It'll be a good one.
It's stored fairly properly, so.
Right. So yeah, so I got relentless with like not keeping stuff that I did. The only thing I keep small scraps of still to this day is plywood.
Yeah.
Because it's going to go into the landfill. I don't burn it, right? Because you shouldn't, because of whatever the glues are. And at the price of a sheet of plywood these days, like I try to keep everything. And a lot of times, like I'll just make like a simple jig, you know, that just
little pieces
of plywood that I glue and like brad nail together and then use it once. And then now it's kind of done its thing.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it was a lot of exercises in looking around and seeing what I actually use and what I don't use and what is superfluous and what is, why am I holding on to it? Is there like an attachment to it that I have? Is it like an emotional attachment to the tool?
Does it bring you joy?
Right. Does it bring you joy? And like in a lot of cases they didn't. It was just stuff. And so I really pared down on the stuff. Because what's in this shop, which is going to be the last shop, but until next year, maybe. No, just kidding. Everything there was at least twice as much stuff, from past ones. And every time we moved, and I mean, to be fair, we only moved like 4 times.
3, 4?
4.
Yeah.
In how long? How many years?
5. Yeah. I was in the military, right? We moved all the time. But every time I moved, I ended up getting rid of stuff, even including this last move. And so like we go through this as woodworkers, we go through this, like we buy, and then we sort of plateau, and then we're like, purge. And then you start getting rid of stuff because you realize these things that you don't use them as much as you thought you would, and you get rid of them. So,
I think you're meticulous that way though, because you get out the graph paper and you start taking notes and that. So you're organized that way.
Right. I mean, like, and that's the other thing too, is like, take the time to think about your space that you're going to be moving into and figure out, okay, what's the usable space? Like I haven't used up all the space in this shop yet.
What's the footprint here?
It's about 380
square feet.
Yeah.
Feet.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Feet.
Okay.
That's what you Americans like, right?
Yes, but I wasn't.
You Americans.
Wasn't expecting you to do the conversion for me.
Right. Well,
right off the bat.
Yeah. No, we're half and half here.
Well, I noticed you said 12-inch ruler.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to make our guests feel.
Okay. All right. I work in inches.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
I do.
See, I was making the assumption that you didn't.
No. I do everything metric except woodworking.
That's interesting.
So temperature, kilometers per hour is metric, but woodworking is...
Why?
Yes,
it's
why?
Because the woodworking industry, even in Canada, is geared around, board feet and inches. And
well, to be fair, board feet makes way more sense because in the rest of the world, wood is sold by the cubic meter.
Yeah.
So imagine this table by this table by this table of wood. What the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
It's like buying cordwood.
It's exactly like buying cordwood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. It's a volumetric measurement, not a... Well, so is board feet, though. It's still volumetric. Because it's cubic centimeters, basically. Or cubic inches, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The way you're describing it, though, it's more like a chunk.
Right. It's like a big... it's like this bench. It's like a big cube of wood. Well, how... Is that enough to do the thing I want to do? Yeah. And then if you only need a small piece of wood, is that like 0.001 of a A cubic meter?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I don't know.
Maybe someone can comment on that who works in cubic meters of wood. They can tell us. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got onto cubic meters of wood.
I'm not sure either.
But it happened.
It did.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as, again, with the moving thing, packing is always stressful, especially tools. My hand tools are always important to me. And so I want them. And then the machinery can sometimes be stressful as well, because people don't understand that you just can't grab the joiner by the outfeed table and start moving it around. And so, the first move we did, I just watched in horror as it happened, and then, fixed it, like tuned up all the machines when they got to the next job. The next time I moved, I held a briefing. And I said, all right, I don't care what you do with the stuff in the house, but in here, you don't lift or move this machine from this point, this point, this point, or this point. Oh, but that's the easiest part. I don't care. You're going to figure out a way to move it, right? And everything's on wheels and everything, you know what I mean? But it's like, don't grab my bandsaw by the table and start jerking it around. Or the rails, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's certain things that so if you're moving, don't assume that movers know, right? Because they don't know. Yeah. But they're usually conscientious and don't want to wreck your stuff either. So if you take the time to explain things to them.
And they probably appreciate that. And also that saves you from having that feeling when you're watching somebody mishandle something. That's a terrible feeling. And you don't want to quite say something, but then you do want to say something.
Oh, I say things. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's no, I don't worry about anybody's feelings at that point when my 12-inch joiner combination machine is being, tipped on its end. No, stop what you're doing right now.
Right.
Because otherwise it's going to go nasty.
Although having said that, you helped me get my saw stop into the basement. And I think in hindsight, I would have hired a moving company after that.
But it was in parts because it was brand new, right? So but still, you didn't have to worry about wrecking the trunnions or having the table go off kilter or whatever.
No, you just have to worry about being trapped under the
he went down
first.
Backwards.
Yeah. And there were a couple of moments where we thought, well, this is where they're going to find our bodies, right here on this set of stairs pinned under this saw stop.
Yeah, I had no steps to get. I just had to get through my yard and maybe one step up into my shop with the saw stop coming in the packaging. It was heavy still.
Yeah.
Right.
It was not. I can't even imagine going down a set of steps with it.
Yeah. Well, I only had two basement shops. And the first one was much earlier on. But everything else has always been either a garage or an outbuilding. Yeah. And so that was always fortunate because they basically just had to wheel things.
Yeah.
But
lugging wood in was a lot easier.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. Much easier. So, but yeah. You got anything else?
There's another question if you think we have time.
Oh, yeah. We can answer a quick question.
Okay. This is from Philhead Caskets. Okay. Question for Vic. For both of you, really, you're both gonna, and I could probably have some input here. When jointing boards by hand in preparation for edge gluing, how do you handle it if the grain directions don't agree with each other? Generally, you can clamp the boards together to cancel out any angle you might introduce on the edges with the plane, but if one's cutting nicely and the other is tearing out, what can you do?
That's a good point. So a sharp blade, and this is going to sound silly, but sharpen your blade, but a sharp blade can defeat a lot of problems, right? Including planing against the grain. Now that's not true for all woods and, different types, but that's the first thing I try is, make sure that the blade is sharp, make sure that the mouth is nice and tight. And then if you're running a bevel up plane, then have a higher angle blade in that plane that's going to help reduce the tear. we actually talked about this question a little bit over dinner because we were looking at all the questions, and Steve had suggested sanding.
Right. So one of the things is occasionally working with gnarly grain veneer. As good as the track saw is at doing that, or as good as a hand plane is shooting that, occasionally you've got to break out the sandpaper, because sandpaper doesn't care in grain direction for edge, I don't think. So, I've got a shooting sander. When I first came out of Rosewood, I just went and bought square aluminum tube and stuck sandpaper to it. But, you can buy shooting sanders now, and you can sand it.
I forgot about the tube, the hollow aluminum tube, because you can get those in pretty big profiles.
Right. Huh. So sanding will, and it's not like you're trying to hog material away. You're just getting the two edges to meet nicely.
And I've seen a lot of guitar makers use that technique, where they basically like fold their guitar pieces together and then use a sanding block that they've made like out of pop or maple or what have you, and then they sand, and then they take a look to see if they can see light, and then if it's good, they put it together.
Well, I think you're like sharp blade.
Yeah,
it solves 80% of the problem.
100%. What about you?
I have nothing to add to that.
Okay.
We must have done it right then.
Did we?
I think they're both good solutions.
I think so too. I think and I mean, like, that's true with any sort of hand planing issue, right? Like, I mean, there's a certain point where the hand plane just may not be able to do the task you're trying to throw at it. And so then you can go to a scraper, right? But scraping's not, for doing jointing work is not a great idea. But then the next step is sanding. And so I think it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, you're probably close to getting the edges to mate fairly decently. It's just that final touch-up, right?
Right. Yeah, 100%. Cool. So that's it. That's the Canada edition.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah.
I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Same. Well, you're going to get all the heat from Ben if it didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
you and I just get to sit and look
right.
pretty.
Right. And you did a fine job doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did great. I'd be the one swinging from the gallows, but you guys were there to help, but not when the...
and to witness.
Not when the... witness the reckoning.
Right.
Right. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, it was fun hanging out.
Awesome.
It was great being here.
That wraps this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you'd like your questions answered on one of our episodes, please send us a message to shoptalklive@finewoodworking.com. And if you'd like, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our Discord channel. It's a really fun place to chat with other woodworkers on a variety of different topics. We've even got a thread called Shop Tunes where you can share what you listen to in the shop. As we mentioned earlier in this episode, Woodworking Travel Tours is now available for registration, which is an 8-day trip through England, guided by Phil Hubert and Anissa Capsalas. And it's an 8-day trip in England where you get to visit a variety of shops, museums, and even Triton tool manufacturing plants. And looks like a lot of fun. We will list the registration page in our podcast notes, as always. Look forward to seeing you next time.